Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of BEARSKIFILM. Tonight, we're doing something a little bit different. Me and David are still going to have our normal Monday night show, but I don't know. I had a lot of feelings about this game, so I was kind of motivated to just do a little post-game show. And I want to thank J2K, the guy that's designed our whole channel, our logo, and all the background and everything like that you see, for joining me last second on short notice. So thank you so much, J2K. How you doing tonight?
Hey, thanks for inviting me. And, I'm okay. That was a horrible, horrible game. I'm kind of a little numb to, just the losing, not really sure if there is an answer. Went from bad to worse. And, now I'm left just wondering, who do we keep? Players, coaches, GM, president, owners, if we could get rid of them.
Right.
Maybe
only.
that's the thing that's holding us up all these years. I mean, it's just, I'm at a loss for words, but I'll try to express it as best I can.
Yeah, and that's the sad part, is we have such a good, dedicated fan base. And I mean, we feel the love from just doing the show, from getting comments on our videos, from the live chat interaction with all you guys that are participating and watching tonight and everything like that. And so we feel it. We know that this fan base is very loyal, very dedicated, and always tends to give the upside a chance, right? And so, that's where oftentimes I'm called a hater or whatnot. And it's not that I'm that, it's just that I'm more of a realist. And, I saw all these narratives going around, like, what if we win out or go 4-1 with Thomas Brown or this and that? And like, really the only thing the guy did was, say the right things at a press conference. I just kind of knew it wasn't going to be very likely. And just in my personal conversation with David today, or even yesterday, I think I texted him, like, what if this thing's a disaster? Like, nobody's talking about that. And I was like, and I think if it is, against this depleted San Francisco 49ers team, it's totally a winnable game for us. But what if they just come in here at their very worst and just wipe the floor with us? What then? And unfortunately, it wound up kind of going that way. And it's just, you're left with that feeling, like you said, J2K, of just, what now? What next?
Right. Yeah. And really quick, just shout out to the chat, Crimson and Furious. What's up, you guys? Good to see you. Yeah, so what is next? After this game, I think you start looking at just the overall idea that, we may just need entire, revamp of coaches to start. I'm a huge Thomas Brown fan. I never thought he would be in a position to be our head coach. I like the idea of having him in the building because he's got such a great reputation. But at this point, now I just think, the players need to be held accountable. The coaching needs to step in. New coaching needs to step in to where it's a clean slate for everybody. But, Tyreek Stevenson, you're not practicing hard. You're benched, right? We don't have Nate Davis here anymore, but man, they gave him a long leash, and other players are seeing this like, oh, what can I get away with? Right. And I think today we saw, two teams that are on the edge of being out of playoff contention, one showing up like they can actually make the playoffs, and the Bears showing up like this season's already over.
And that's the hard part, because Thomas Brown is in a very unique situation, right? Like, obviously, the win-loss record in this league dictates for players, for coaches, for a lot of people, what kind of job opportunities you get in the future. You know what I mean? The statistics, they tend to get looked at a lot. But what I was telling David is, it's for me, it's going to be eye test. Like, if we win this game, but there's bad clock mismanagement, there's like bad challenge flags or something, I'm going to be a little bit down. But like, if we lose this game, however we give max effort, however you see a lot of good things going on the field, like that's where I would give Thomas Brown a head nod. And so you mentioned the word accountability. It's the word we've heard Matt Eberflus repeat now for multiple weeks that he wouldn't do his first 2 years as the Bears head coach. But, it's not what you say, it's what you do. So if I'm Thomas Brown and I'm going, listen, I may lose out anyway, to me, the style points kind of matter. Like, no.
Right.
We're going to hold these guys accountable. And like you said, either bench them or sit them or do whatever it takes to let them know that the effort that you need from them out on the field needs to be at maximum, period. And you need to put your foot down and lay down that law, regardless of the wins and loss result at the end of the game. And I think if you do that, I think more organizations around the league would actually look at you and understand more who you are as a head coach. You got to have a backbone here. You can't sit there and just continue this, right?
Right. No, you can't. I like Thomas Brown, but at this point, it's not even that I'm out on Thomas Brown that I want to move on. It's just the players need new leadership. They need new accountability. There isn't, oh, well, we've been together for 3 years, so I'll give you a pass, all this kind of stuff. And, I do agree with the chat that, this is a hard time for players to focus. Losing, your offensive coordinator gets fired. A couple weeks later, your head coach gets fired. Some players are thinking, where am I going to go on vacation in the off season? How much, how hard do I want to play with this injury that I have that's, I've been playing on for most of the season. I saw Dexter out there and, he had a strange injury where he started limping into the back in the end zone, took him out, and then he was back on the field. And I saw him, chasing down Brock Purdy on a rollout, and he was limping. And at some point, you're wondering, like, how much do these guys actually want to sacrifice their body for a losing season? A whole coaching regime that is, potentially just completely out the door. And that's not even to start with the player acquisition side of things with, Ryan Poles. It's now his name is on the table to talk about between, Kevin Warren and unfortunately George McCaskey. But you got to start looking at, did Poles get the right guy? Has he had too many misses in free agency, in draft? Is he too many misses in coaching? With Eberflus, how much of the roster building was Ryan Poles, or how much was him, conceding to what Flus wanted? Maybe Flus said, "This is the plan I want to get the type of players I want." Poles said, "Okay, we'll do it your way." Or is this Ryan Poles saying, "No, this is how we're going to do it. I'll get you players that I know you'll like, but we're gonna build this thing outside in and not inside out." We're still having problems with the offensive line.
And that's the thing. It's like, when you hire nothing but yes men, all you're going to get is head nods. Like Matt Eberflus was all on board for trading up for Rome Odunze, whereas a guy like Jim Harbaugh went into the Chargers, and what was his first draft pick? A left tackle, right? So even if you and the general manager disagree, you should still, as a coach, put your foot down and say, "Hey, this is what's best for the team construction." Because I see it every day. I run it every day. If you still go off and pick whoever you pick, okay, you're the general manager. That's on you. But this is who I want. Instead of being like, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea, Ryan. I'm all in. I'm all into whatever you want." And I think, that's what you get with guys who are a little bit more experienced in this league, who, can just play to the beat of their own drum. I just wanted to kind of address some things real quick, real amphibious. Paulski, awesome shirt. I am a musician at first, so anytime there's a shout out for Tool, I will always address that. Thank you so much, man. I love the band, and yeah, it's a cool shout out. And then I wanted to kind of put David's comment up here. I can't imagine a top tier candidate seeing this effort and this team thinking I could get the most out of them. You won't get a top tier candidate with this, and so I think that, I like to disagree with David. I think that may be a little bit off. You just won't do it this year. I mean, the season's lost, right? I still think there's plenty of talent on this team as long as it's taken seriously from the start. Like, these guys have comments going back to training camp. And so this has been festering within this team for a long time. I'm not surprised that it's looking how it's looking with the effort. But, J2K, the thing that bothers me the most, because all that's really important for me in this final stretch of games, is Caleb Williams, his production, his ability to grow. And I keep saying it, you're not going to learn anything by getting sacked over and over. I'd almost rather have you, I mean, as bad as it is, throw interceptions, but like the sacks, man, those pile up, and especially if you get an injury from it, those things can linger over time for a long time. These guys start seeing ghosts after years and things like that. Like, you can't just continue to do this. And the first drive was a 3-and-out. I believe it was run, pass, and that was it, 3-and-out. The next 4 drives, because the first 5 drives were all punts, right? The next 4 drives, 4 third downs in a row. J2K, let me show you what happened.
4th down and 10. Williams can't find anyone.
Caleb, and that's one thing Caleb has done. If it is not open, he's not going to test the water.
Williams under pressure.
You're expecting man from the 49ers, but now Caleb Williams, he's seeing a different look.
3rd down and 5. Williams escapes.
Passing game. He goes up. He's getting Coleman Shelton one-on-one, beats him like a drum.
And Tom Brady all together. 3rd down and 2.
Everyone is one-on-one. It's great coverage. Don't get me wrong.
J2K,
that's all
3
third
downs.
downs.
Yeah,
Right. All third down, trying to get a first down. Obviously, I think most of that is obviously on the offensive line. I think there was one play there. Braxton got beat around the edge. Caleb was stepping up, and he did have receivers. He just didn't let it go soon enough, in my opinion. But you're still seeing, that doesn't absolve Braxton Jones from, again, getting beat around the edge just over and over. And I think, I don't know if the sack was in that highlight video where Braxton got beat on a bull rush and the guy sacked Caleb Williams with Braxton still in front of him. He sandwiched Braxton Jones between Caleb and the defender.
I believe that was in the second half. So I only just put the first half sack together, but yes.
There's more of that.
Yeah. Right. That's half of it. That's only half of it. Like,
and you saw Shelton just getting bullied again, just pushed to the ground. Like, he should have never been a starting option. Him and Ryan Bates, neither one of them are starting options, and that's who we started the season with.
And it's a domino effect because we got Coleman Shelton here. Why? Because, well, he's familiar with Shane Waldron's offense. Where's that now? Right? Now that doesn't matter at all because Shane Waldron's not even here. And so, like you mentioned, that's only half of it. We ended the game with Caleb getting sacked 7 times. In fact, he's been sacked 56 times on the year. I believe that breaks the rookie sack record. Yeah. So, as many records as Caleb might break for the Bears this year, rookie passing record, rookie touchdown record, he's also broken the NFL record for being the most sack rookie.
That's man, the ups and downs. I think we've got, a hell of a player in Caleb. He's doing the most that he can, given what he's been given. So I can't fault him too much. I just go back to, he's a rookie. He's going to make mistakes. Year 2, we won't see this as much, but we may if we don't fix this offensive line.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for him to bounce back from that. But I mean, that, it's more than the offensive line, in my opinion. When you reach a number that's that large, when you're setting a sack record, I mean, there's going to be blame everywhere, right? There's blame on the scheme. There's blame on the offensive lineman's execution. There's blame on the quarterback here and there too. There's probably some plays where he can get rid of it and he doesn't and he gets sacked. So, but when you, combine all those things, that's when you get, epic failure like we're kind of seeing. So, it's ugly, man. It's really, really ugly. And so the one thing I definitely wanted Thomas Brown to kind of hopefully focus on and do is just keep the kid upright. And we did not see that today. And so to me, that's extremely alarming. I hope that doesn't continue moving forward, because then I'm going to start asking myself, well, is the experience worth the pain?
Yeah. I think it's fair to question everything at this point. I think what you saw from the 49ers defense today was they were mixing coverage up. So we saw Caleb pause a few times because he thought he was going to see one thing. He ended up seeing something else. It, caused, a hitch or two. He didn't release the ball because he wasn't sure. Those things I think will get cleaned up in time with Caleb, more so because I believe in Caleb. I've seen his progression so far this season. So I'm still optimistic that Caleb can do that. Now, am I optimistic that we find a coach that can keep this, upward trajectory? And this ties in a little bit. I did want to go back to David's point. Who would want to come here with this disaster show? Well, maybe a head coach wants to come here if he also can pick his own GM or, a tandem. So now you question, okay, is the job more enticing for Ben Johnson if he can go and get his own GM and run the whole show? Is that how you get a guy who optimistically saying could be the next great offensive minded head coach and become the next Kyle Shanahan or the next great coach? So how much more enticing is this job opening if he can pick his own GM? And that's something that I'm seriously considering, which, I do like Ryan Poles. I don't think he's made enough misses to fire him outright, but same with some of our coaches. There's some coaches that I like. I do like Thomas Brown, but at some point it's just, you need new faces in the building to hold everybody accountable.
Yeah, and so it kind of sounds similar to this last offseason, where we were looking at Matt Eberflus going, well, okay, there's clear upgrades. There's clear upgrades out there available, right? And you should probably pull the trigger, get rid of Eberflus, and go after somebody who's more experienced or just a clear upgrade at that position. Well, when you start looking at Ryan Poles, it's kind of like the same thing, because we started talking about Matt Eberflus, and it's like, okay, it's going to be a ballsy move though, because year 1 to year 2, the wins increased, right? At the end of year 2, the team played hard. Like, there was also reasons
Yep.
for keeping the Matt Eberflus thing going, right? That made sense from a conservative standpoint. However, this is the NFL. Like, in my opinion, but I mean, I'm just a guy sitting on his couch, right? So it's a lot easier for me to be like, oh, take a bigger risk, because that's what it is. Like, they kind of leaned on conservatism, being conservative a little bit more than usual. And I love that as a draft strategy. Don't get me wrong. I love being conservative in the draft. However, I don't love being conservative when it comes to every situation you come across as a GM. Like, you probably should have moved on from Matt Eberflus during this offseason and upgraded. There's a tendency for doing things like 30% too late. Chase Claypool, you held on to him for too long. Nate Davis, you held on to him for too long. Velus Jones, you held on to him for too long. Now, Matt Eberflus, you kind of held on to him for a little bit too long. And so that, you're right. Now you take a step up and you start kind of looking at the GM and going, well, how much a percentage of the blame do you deserve?
Right. And it's the time of the season, of the record, that you question everybody. And so I think everything's on the table now. I don't know how many other ways we can say it, but this season there was optimism going into it. We did have a run at the end of last year. Our defense played very well. We did get Caleb Williams, which I thought would take a step back because he's a rookie, but even he has exceeded my expectations of him, showing me that I'm very confident of him going forward in the future, that he can easily be a top 10 quarterback. So I thought there was a lot of optimism going into the season, and to be this far down, this far away from that optimism, and a complete, retooling of the entire coaching staff and potentially the scouting department or general manager. We literally, I don't even know if we ever even got out of the rebuild, and we're right back in it. So I think change has to happen, but yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. It's like, we were sold on this narrative that, okay, we got to do this right this time, so it's gonna take some time, right? And now we're in year 3, being patient, going, well, are we still out of the in the rebuild? Do we need to restart another rebuild? Like, well, what's going on here? Meanwhile, other teams around the league, it doesn't take that long.
Right.
Sean Payton is dealing with a much worse situation from a team building perspective. They're paying Russell Wilson how much? The Broncos are. Right. Meanwhile, he's got the Bo Nix, the 4th quarterback taken in this draft,
right,
making him look good. And that's year 2 he's been there, right? You look at Washington with Jaden Daniels. And listen, I'm a guy that I need 3 years to fully evaluate a quarterback, right? So, like, the first year flash or whatever, that's great. And for me, it's all about consistency. And that's why I like Caleb. And I'm sticking with Caleb. And I will for 2 more years before I actually kind of come to any kind of conclusion with him. But when it comes to the coaching staff, the reason I was a little bit hesitant about hyping up Thomas Brown at all, or just kind of even entertaining the idea that even if he wins out or goes 4-1 or something, we still carry him into next year and keep him around, is because you still just don't know who this guy is. Like I said, it takes a lot of time to sit there and be able to evaluate quarterbacks. It takes a lot of time to sit there and be able to evaluate coaches too. And so that's why I've been kind of in the mindset of, listen, I don't need the best coaching staff in here. I really don't. If you get Vrabel in here with a competent offensive coordinator too, like, I may be fine with that. I think I just need enough stability and structure from the coaching staff, because I feel like we have enough talent to where they should be able to go out there. As long as the floor is low, I think they're capable to take you far with the talent they have. But you can't make it an uphill battle for them every single step of the way, which is what I think we're seeing right now.
Well, I think that it's lopsided is the issue right now, is that, we've got a great or our top 3 wide receivers are great. We've got a secondary that, if Brister was playing, was arguably, one of the better secondaries in football. But our defensive line, we've got, 1 pass rusher, Dexter, I still, I'm still on the fence whether he really is our 3 tech, and is he just more of an athletic nose tackle, and him and Billings should be rotating a little more. And we need, a better 3 tech to rotate with those guys. I like Austin Booker, but you're asking too much of a 5th round draft pick. I think there's a ton of upside to the kid, but it's just too much for him right now. Offensive line, obviously, I think we've got 1 position nailed down, and that's it. So to me, it's, there is a lot of talent, but I just think it wasn't built in a balanced way. And that's been my concern about Ryan Poles. And I said this from the beginning, is, after his first draft, after the first offseason, obviously there was a tear down year. We didn't have a 1st round draft pick. But the how the roster was built, I was like, what's the plan here? And everybody's like, trust in Poles. I trust Poles. Poles
Right.
got this, right? And that's the only thing people said. I'm like, but there is no resume. Why are you just blind? Why is this just blind faith in this? Right after we got out of, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, who were GM and coach of the year, like, they actually built a resume that suggested they were doing a good job. They floundered. And then you go over, you get a new guy in Ryan Poles, and people just, instantly trust he's going to do a great job. Just pure blind faith. I never understood that. And now we're having that conversation. Why did we not build inside out? Why did we target secondary and wide receivers so much?
Right. And it's also the draft capital you spend on targeting those positions. So I was I can't remember which show I was participating in chat on, but the question was asked, like, has Ryan Poles neglected the offensive line? And I wouldn't use such a harsh word as neglected when it comes to the draft. I mean, you have a first round pick in Darnell Wright, third round pick in Amagaji, but then after that, it's fifth and sixth rounders, right? As far as free agency goes, you've tried to slap a band-aid on the center position for multiple years in a row now, right? Like it's not neglect. You're still trying. However, you're not making it a priority, right? And I think we're seeing. I've also said before, you want to implode an offense, the fastest way is through a bad offensive line.
Right.
It'll
And I
ruin
think
your right.
What I start to look at is, okay, like, so who do I subtract out of the player acquisitions of Ryan Poles? Could we have taken Joe Alt instead of Rome Odunze, right? Or JC Latham, offensive lineman? Could we have taken Abraham Lucas instead of Velus Jones? Could we have signed and drafted offensive linemen with the resources we used on Keenan Allen? So I started to go back to that. Okay, well, I started seeing it as neglect because I didn't see Velus Jones, forget the player, but the role that he offered to the team, at the time. I didn't think we were, a kick returner, gadget player, away from having a good offense that you would spend a third round pick on him. Like, that to me was just nuts. No, you build the trenches, get a defensive tackle, get a center, get an offensive guard. That's where you find those kind of gems, is right in that little window, that third, fourth round. There's a lot of good offensive guards that come out of that spot, or a nose tackle that will guarantee that they'll stop the run and maybe comes out on third down, or obvious passing situations. But it's a fourth round pick. It's not a huge, you're not spending a first round draft pick on a nose tackle. You're spending a fourth round draft pick on the trenches. So I do start to see that, the 32nd overall pick for Chase Claypool. That was, it was a huge risk to spend those assets. And when you look at the other wide receivers that have been traded in the last couple of years, nobody is giving up a second round pick for these guys,
Right. It's either a later pick than that, or it's like 2 first rounders for Devontae, or 2 first rounders for Tyreek or something. But like, to have that, like, just 1 first round pick for a guy, yeah, there was no middle ground there. And like you said, I've done the draft value and the draft capital studies a lot, and you asked, should we have taken Joe Alt or something? So you got to also understand too, like, the first defensive player taken in the draft last year was at pick 16.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so you could trade down to pick 14, 15, 16, if possible. Now you have to have that offer out there and get 2 guys. You see what I'm saying? And so whatever those names are, I think the draft is such a shit show. Like, you could go back year after year after year and pick any team and be like, look, they should have drafted this guy instead of this guy instead of this guy. Like, you could do it to anybody. You could pick them apart like that. However, just from a team needs standpoint and a team building standpoint, we have obvious holes, yet we're drafting wide receiver 3, and then we're almost trading up to draft for wide receiver 3.
Right.
When you look at defensive ends, those are the guys that go in the first round.
Right.
Period. Like, even second rounders, some might work out, but rarely. Like, the only fourth round defensive end I can think that's out there that's doing good is Max Crosby. Like, very rarely do you have late round defensive tackles or defensive ends actually pan out in the NFL long term. And so, to take Austin Booker in the 5th, you said it yourself, J2K. Well, okay, well, it's too much on his plate for what the expectations of him are because of where he's drafted. Well, okay, well, then that draft pick should have been a guard or a center. You know what I mean? Because you could find those guys later and they tend to pan out more. You could have done this so many different ways, but instead, and this is why, like you said, you start to look up the ladder and you start to look at Ryan Poles and go, well, how much of the finger pointing is that going your way? Because, yeah, you definitely neglected obvious talent holes and drafted positions that, aren't very, they're not changing the game for you this year. Like Rome Odunze is a nice pick, but he's a pick for the future. I knew he wasn't going to make the type of impact we needed this year in order to have success. And, you're going to live and die by those things. And it's unorthodox and it's weird. And it's, if it doesn't work out, it's going to cut your leash on your career a lot. So now, like you said, if the GM position was available, how much more enticing would this position be? Probably a lot more, but I don't think it's going to be available. I think Ryan Poles is still here.
Right.
Yeah, because he's done enough, right?
I'd err on the side that Poles will be still here. But when we look at last off season, everybody's like, that's when we should have made the change for getting a head coach. I wonder if we are looking back at this coming off season and saying, this is the time we should have married a GM and a head coach together.
100%. 100%. And that's the thing. It's like, if you have high expectations, then you won't make this argument for keeping things consistent. You'll just say, no, that's not good enough. You're not good enough. This is whatever. We're just going to move on and try something else quick. Because like I said, the turnaround for a lot of teams in this league is quick. It is.
Right.
However, what's more likely to happen is you're going to say, hey, you've done enough good. Typically, GMs get 2 shots at a coach. Take your second one. However, because he backed Matt Eberflus so much this last offseason, now I don't know if that's due to ownership forcing him to do that, then I don't know, he might be better off quitting, right? But word, like we could speculate all day. However, what's fact is I saw Ryan Poles sit in a press conference going, no, this is our guy. I didn't interview Jim because this is our guy and the position's not open. So he said that. He's got to live and die by it now. And I think that cut his career leash a lot. I think this next year, whoever he brings in, if there's not instant success, oh, man.
Right.
Might be
Well,
ugly.
how much credit do you give the rumor that Harbaugh and Kevin Warren, they did have some words with each other when they were in the Big Ten over COVID and not playing. So they had a disagreement there. And now there's this rumor that Kevin Warren just shot down the Harbaugh possibilities like completely. Right.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different factors to consider there, J2. And like I said, me and David were both screaming for Jim Harbaugh and to get rid of Eberflus. But like I said, at the end of the day, we're 2 guys on their couch watching the game, right? So because there was enough there to make a case for keeping Eberflus, it would have been a very aggressive move by the GM to sit there and move on from him and go a different route. Now, I think it would have been the right move personally. However, I can understand why there are many different things that kind of go into this that made that move not make sense to them. And so, I saw the report, and the report said that like a Bears longtime employee or something told Poles he was interested. No, that's not how it works. You got agents. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, was there any real talk? Was there any real consideration? Or is this just like some report that goes out there just because, it gets a lot of clicks in the moment? I'm not sure. But like I said, that's why I go by what Ryan Poles said. And he said he's backing Matt Eberflus. And that's his coach and that's his guy. And honestly, it was Shane Waldron that really did this thing in, man. Like, that didn't go so bad.
Yeah, right.
You
And
know,
actually, just to go back on the Harbaugh thing, I'm 100% sure that Harbaugh wanted the Chargers job. I know this just because, when he left Chicago, he went to play for the Chargers. He created a relationship with the Spanos. When he left the NFL, his first job was at San Diego University as a head coach. Then he goes to Stanford. Then he goes to San Francisco. And then he goes to Michigan, right? So and that was his alma mater, but he's loved the West Coast. He's great friends with the Spanos. The moment he was like, I can get back into the NFL, and go and coach the Chargers, the team that I've always, been a part of with their ownership and friends with and stuff. I know that he wanted that. And then it did come out, Tom Paralacino had a direct quote that as soon as Harbaugh said anything about a potential coaching job, he said, I'd love to go and coach for the Chargers. And this was something like 6 months before he actually, won the national championship.
oh, right. And everybody in this country knows that California, especially San Diego, it's a beautiful place to wake up every morning and to go to sleep at every night. Like it's nice. It's comfortable.
Right.
Like who wouldn't want to be in San Diego, right?
Right.
And another thing is I'm a big fan of Mike Greenberg, and one of the things that he said on his show was that he was at a wake for somebody and he ran into Jim Harbaugh there, and they just he pulled him aside and they were just having a little conversation, whatever, and he was telling him about the best quarterbacks in the league. And as he started moving on, Jim interrupted him and he's like, wait, don't forget about Justin Herbert. And Green's
Right.
like, huh? And he's like, oh, no, Justin Herbert's a top quarterback in this league. And he's like,
Right.
the amount of praise that Jim had for Justin Herbert. So Greeny was on that same thing when early on he was like, oh, I could see him going to the Chargers just because he likes the quarterback there and he likes the situation there. And
he's a
it
young
makes
quarterback
sense.
too. Talented young quarterback, right?
Right.
Yeah, and all they really had to do is rebuild that offensive line. He went and got his buddy Greg Roman. And the rest is history. They're playing well, and I'm really impressed with Harbaugh's second tenure so far in the NFL. I always thought he was a little bit weird, a little wacky. I preferred his brother John over him if I was going to pick a coach to run a team. But so far he seems like he's kind of he's settled down. He seems very mature. Things aren't so weird. I got to give Harbaugh like all the praise in the world. But I don't think he was ever coming to Chicago. And then when you look at that, he was one of the top names out there. I'm not sure anybody thought that Quinn would have as much success as he's having in Washington. The other guy I really liked was Mike McConnell, who went to Seattle, who's, I think he's doing an okay job, but he didn't like blow the doors off. Another coach to bring up that you were talking about, making a quick turnaround, DeMeco Ryans. He took Houston from, the second worst team in the NFL or something to playoff contentions his first year with a rookie quarterback, with a roster that had, defensive issues, lacking talent on defense. They did have Laramie Tunzel at left tackle, but there are times in that playoff run last year that, they had, undrafted free agents playing on that offensive line because of injuries, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of different situations out there. And, I used to point to the Houston one and say, well, wait a second. We were in the same boat as them. We were very comparable talent wise and position wise. And 1 year later, they're a playoff bound team and we're still this scrappy up and coming team. How can they do it and we can't, and There's a lot of different situations you can point to in this league. I'll go to one Joe Burrow, who he's an outlier. This doesn't happen on the norm, but Joe Burrow got injured early on, I
Right.
believe in his first year, and came back in his second year and made a Super Bowl appearance. You don't
Right.
typically get better when you're hurt, right? And this team had a first overall pick to go get him. So it's not like they were a great team by any means. However, he sat there and elevated their level of play to being a contender, to, you know what I mean? And really, that's why the quarterback matters so much. However, it's so rough to have to do it all on your own right when you get in there. If there's some stability around you, if there's some structure around you, and you can go in there and let your talent shine and just kind of help put things over the top, I think those are the situations you see guys really flourish in. And that's why, like I said, I've been making this case for, I don't want to gamble. I don't want to hope. I don't even want like the best coach out there. I don't think that's necessary. I want just a stable, experienced NFL head coach.
Yeah. And I think, I agree with Crimson, Burrow's cautionary tale, but look at the Bengals. What did they do? They targeted a quarterback and a wide receiver with their two highest picks, back-to-back years, right? And they didn't pay enough attention to their offensive line, and so for a minute there, they got enough out of Burrow to have a good season. But, when those close games are suddenly now losses instead of wins, now you're seeing a team that you think, the Bengals should have more wins than they have. Burrow's numbers are actually pretty darn good, So what's the problem? Well, guys getting sacked and beat up all the time. So, you have to have a balanced system in place to building the team. I don't think Poles has done that. I think he's been far too one-sided. And the next coach that comes in here, I hope, steps up and says, no, we need to get back to this offensive line. We need to add to this defensive line. I'll take that over re-signing Keenan Allen, right? Those are the tough decisions that you need to make. Stop with the friendship thing, right? Oh, we're buddies, been around for, let's roll it back, you guys. No, let's make hard decisions that make our team better.
Definitely. And, and just to throw this out there, this, I'm not sure how many playoff wins Joe Burrow has, because this post that I found was from 2 years ago. So he might have a little bit more now, but 2 years ago, it said Joe Burrow had 5 playoff wins before the Bengals drafted him. They had 5 playoff wins in their total franchise history. Right?
Man, we're on that track. What do we have? One winning season in the last 12 years, and that was 2018. I saw that, I think, that stat on Twitter. And really quick, shout out to Prometheus and Flex Diggs. What's up, my guy? Scottish Bear, what's up, buddy? Good to see you in the chat.
Yeah, all the people watching us in the chat that are participating, we love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, Prometheus, you're the man. Crimson, always appreciate you. Flex Sticks as well. Scottish Bears in there. Yeah, we love any time you guys spend watching us and hearing us ramble about the Bears. So thank you so much. Bear down, guys. Appreciate you. But yeah, I mean, that's where we're at, though, J2K, is that's why I want to get this thing right. And so, like, from a philosophy standpoint, even when the Broncos traded for Sean Payton, I was like, wait a second, how much did that cost them? Oh,
right.
I don't know if I'd do that. I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if I want to invest draft capital to trade for a coach. Like, in my brain, it hits a wall. It doesn't make much sense to do so.
I'm
However,
with you 100%, but yeah, I think you're going right where I'm going with it.
Right. And so, like, I know I'm not stubborn enough to just have an opinion and stick to it no matter what. So when I was with the I on his show, or he showed a little graphic of previous head coaches that were traded for.
Right.
And all these guys are home runs.
Yes.
Right. So, like, if you're going to make that move, you're gonna make it for a guy that is a good guy. And like, are we at a spot now where that might actually be worth it for us to make? Now, Crimson says we can't afford it. Listen, it's really just like a hit with draft picks. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. It's still a hit. We have actually accumulated a lot of draft capital through having, the first overall pick traded back and everything like that. And we might have a pretty high pick this year too. But like, would it be worth it? Like, if you had to give up a first and Carolina's second, and the first pick you have is going to be your second round pick this year, is it worth it if you get Sean McVay or if you get Kyle Shanahan?
I'm with you, BEARSKIFILM. Like, before Sean Payton, I think the next best example was John Gruden, and that was a while ago, right? And thinking about it, I'm like, I would prefer to have the draft picks. That's what really builds a team. But man, watching Sean Payton do what he did in Denver, salary cap was horrible. They're still paying Russell Wilson. You go and you get Bo Nix, who I thought was a reach in the draft, and the guy looks like the next Drew Brees now. I mean, what he is pulling out of these kids, it's just incredible. And I got to sit back and say, yeah, you might not be able to afford not to do it. I mean, if you could get the next great head coach who will be with your team for 10 years, who will get the most out of your players, who'll get the most out of the scheme, who's smart enough to out scheme other teams, he's got the connections to build an incredible coaching staff along with it. He's got the scouting department that's going to make all the right decisions when they're drafting guys. I mean, look at what the Rams have done in the draft after giving away all those picks for Stafford. Puka was, what, a 5th round draft pick or something? I mean, they consistently churn out guys in the late rounds into stud players.
Right. And if you're able to do that, then that draft capital hit that you take doesn't become as detrimental.
Right.
Because
it could be misses, because the draft is still a gamble, and you've got poor scouting department because you don't have a head coach and GM that's married, to each other in philosophy or talent. I'm sure Sean Payton is in that GM's ear, and I'm not really sure. I think the GM traded for Sean Payton, so he was already there. Don't quote me on that. I'm not really exactly sure, but I'm sure that Sean Payton is a big part of that scouting department. That he gets his eyes on these college kids and saying, yes, look, I can work with Bo Nix. I can make that guy a stud. When the guy couldn't hit the goalpost from the goal line, in college, right? And you see the guy dropping bombs to Mims.
And and the beauty of it is if you get a guy and he can't do it, then you're like the 49ers with Trey Lance. Well, then you cut the cord quick and move on from the mistake quick. You see what I'm saying? So like, but just to read this out to you. So Sean Payton from Saints to Broncos. The one before that was Bruce Arians, which actually was just a 6th round pick, and he went from the Cardinals to the Bucks. Herm Edwards in 2006 from the Jets to the Chiefs. John Gruden, who you mentioned in 2002 from Raiders to Buccaneers. That cost him 2 first-round picks. Bill Belichick from the Jets to the Patriots. What was Bill coach for the Jets for like a day or something, right? First-round pick, 4th-round pick, 7th-round pick. And the Pats got a 5th and 7th rounder in return. Mike Holmgren in 1999, Packers to Seahawks. Bill Parcells, 97 from Patriots to Jets. And 3 of the 6 prior trades resulted in at least 1 Super Bowl for the acquiring team.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean,
man, you look at that list, man. Carl makes a great point. He really does, and it's hard to argue against it. Now, I think the discussion needs to turn to, well, who's available? Like, honestly, actually, Sean Payton sat out a year, right? And they still traded for him. No way the Rams are trading McVay. No way John Lynch is trading Kyle Shanahan. If anything, Kyle Shanahan, got John Lynch the GM job. It wasn't the other way around, right? So then, who else is out there that you could make this kind of a deal, right?
Right, and that's a great question, and that's why, I really love the little Mike Tomlin rumors at the beginning of the year. However, that's off the table now because of the success that team's had. But
well, and to point this out, another head coach who went and targeted the offensive line, targeted the defensive line. He didn't target wide receiver as much. Sure, they drafted George Pickens in the second round. They let some wide receivers go. He got a little bit lucky with Russell Wilson, having a bit of a revival and trading for Justin Fields for what looks to be a 6th round pick now, right? But still, the way they built their teams, the way Tomlin targeted defensive line, targeted offensive line, just in the last 2 years, shows me like they know what they're doing. They know how to make a team, into a playoff caliber team year after year. Even when they blew the pick with Kenny Pickett, right? They drafted him. He's Pittsburgh to Pittsburgh, college to the NFL. He's not even moving locker rooms, all that kind of hype and stuff. I didn't think highly of Pickett. And they made a mistake. But what do? They ended that. They stopped it. They didn't keep him around. They said, we're done. Kyle Shanahan, trades 3 first-round draft picks to move up to Trey Lance. As soon as he got Brock Purdy in the room, Trey Lance, you're gone for a 5th-round draft pick.
Right. You'll take any kind of compensation you can and just eat your mistake and eat your blunder. But what that tells you is that there's confidence in the talent evaluation going on in that situation. They know what they're seeing, regardless of how much they spent on them.
And how important a roster position is. To stick with Velus Jones for as long as we did was purely, that was a roster spot that could have been used for somebody else. Give somebody else a chance, and the guy was obviously failing over and over and over again.
J2K, I'm still going nuts about Tyler Scott in a weird way. Look, wait a second. You gave this 3rd-round pick all these. Okay, I understand that. However, we have 3 wide receivers all over 6 foot.
Right.
6'2", 6'4", I believe 6'1", and you can't tell me there's not room on this offense for a play here and there for a guy to go out there and just stretch the field. And this guy's been invisible, and you spent a 4th-round draft pick on him. Right? I don't know. Give me your thoughts on him.
So I was really heavy on how much I disliked the Velus Jones pick, the player, the positional need, all that kind of stuff. I kind of stayed a little bit quiet because when we took Tyler Scott, I didn't like the draft pick. I didn't like the player. And I didn't want to come across as someone who just hates every wide receiver draft pick that Ryan Poles, makes, right? So I stayed a little bit quiet about him. I didn't like the pick. And I'm not surprised he's invisible, unfortunately.
And that's fine, because at the end of the day, he is a 4th-round pick. So, if you're going to take shots at guys, I prefer you do it 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. You know what I mean? Because, it doesn't kill you that much. But, it's just inconsistent, because then, like I said, you sit there and spend this draft capital on other guys, and the expectations for them are much higher, right? Like you mentioned Austin Booker. He's a 5th-round draft pick.
Right.
Or what was he supposed to do? Come in here and be the 2nd-best defensive end on this team opposite of Montez Sweat this year? It's just not going to happen. And I don't know. It's just weird to me. Like you said, the team construction, it's all.
Well, and look at how much he's playing right now. Because of the fact that we didn't have, roster talent on the team, you've got a 5th-round pick in Booker, who as a pass rusher, I think sky is the limit. As a run defender, he needs to add, a lot of mass to him. He needs to learn how to stop the run. There's a lot of containment issues with Booker, and that's why he fell, is because, a bit of a lopsided player, 1 year of production. There was also, I believe, an injury at a certain point in his college career that was part of the reason why he only had really 1 year of production. I don't even think he was also not a starter. He was a heavy rotational guy. So there was a lot of question marks on him, but he's a guy that we're utilizing a ton because we just don't have anybody else. You got Dominique Robinson. What was he? Late round draft pick, UDFA.
Fifth? I think fifth.
Yeah, fifth round. Yeah. And then, we're trying to get stuff out of these late round draft picks because our roster just isn't there yet overall.
Right. There's too much expectation from these guys that are not in a position to live up to that kind of thing. And I just wanted to address this comment from Prometheus because I love this comment. Quickly moving on from mistakes is beneficial to long-term success. And it's actually because you're at the highest level of the sport, the faster you can recognize the mistakes and the faster you can move on from them is very crucial. And it drove David nuts that they took a press conference that was scheduled for 10 a.m. and like moved it back to noon to fire Shane Waldron. And he's like, what do you need an extra 2 hours for? He's like,
Right.
This is what you're doing. He's like, that takes time is very valued here. And I'll give John Gruden credit because even though I wouldn't want him as a coach now or whatever, this and that, when he was in his prime, man, this guy was waking up at 3, 4 in the morning in his office because that's where he'd sleep and popping up on tape as soon as he woke up.
Right.
Watching tape for 2 hours before anybody showed up to the facility. It was nuts. Like the 2 hours mattered. You know what I mean? This man literally would sacrifice sleep so he could just spend that time watching tape. And, when you do little things like that, it's just kind of like Matt Eberflus firing too. It's like, dude, you let him go out there and do a press conference because you're not sure because the decision hasn't been made yet. I get it was after Thanksgiving and maybe you're just like, listen, go home, spend time with your families, this and that. However, that would be a normal job. That would be my job or your job or whoever else's job. Like, this is the NFL. Sorry, it's Thanksgiving. You better have a fucking meeting.
Right.
and know what you're doing, man.
Plan.
Right.
Right. And, they gave Waldron 10 hours to build a game plan against New England when he's not even going to be the coach there. So I think that there needs to be a built-in contingency plan of like, hey, if we do fire a coach and you have this written down for every single season, it's not something you need to come up with and have a meeting on every year, but owners should okay, if we have a situation where we're going to fire a coach, whether, Alan Williams, that running back coach that we had that we HR fired suddenly, there's a contingency plan. Go, okay, in case this happens, X, Y, and Z happens. So you're prepared. So you make the decision. You don't have to make a bunch of phone calls. You don't have to do a bunch of stuff. You just go through the process. You do it immediately.
And you know what? And that's not football. That's business. And so, like, one of the things that I go back and forth with David on, it's like, okay, so I get in the situation we're in. We're kind of like in a mom and pop's football team situation. I would not want, like, if I'm Ryan Poles and I'm trying to make this move, I would not want Kevin Warren or George to find out that I fired Matt Eberflus through ESPN or Twitter.
Right.
Like, I have to have a meeting with both of them saying, this is what I'm going to do. It's not asking permission to do so, but it's just, hey, so we're all on the same page. So you're not surprised by this. You're not caught by some media and some cameras out there right after it happens, and you're the team owner or the team president. Like, no, everybody's on the same page. If you had a billionaire owner like Jeff Bezos in here, no, that part is cut out. He's just like, that's why I have a team president.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And that's why it's a business. And it goes through that guy down because I got too much other shit going on, right? And so I guess that's where we feel the effect of the McCaskies owning the Bears. Maybe that is part of the reason why some of these things take more time than they should. However, when it comes to like the personnel decisions, when it comes to like cutting these players and things like that, I feel that has to fall on Ryan Poles. Like
Yeah.
when it, and so like you said, I'm with you, J2K. I really, really like Ryan Poles because I really like a conservative draft approach. And what we've had before that was a lot of gambling. Like Ryan Pace would trade up for failures
Yeah.
all the time. It's not the strategy I want to, you know what I mean, go out there and do. And so, initially I like Ryan Poles because of that. But however, you have to take a step back and also account for his failures. And those things seem to be adding up more and more than the successes, man.
And even the success that Ryan Poles has had, given that the coaching has been an issue, or Eberflus was an issue, these other surrounding things, the cap space was an issue that we had to get out of, all these kind of things. Even as good as Ryan Poles has been, it all piles up together, right? You can't just slice out the Ryan Poles and go, oh, it's everything else. No, Ryan Poles has added to it, to his degree. I am cautiously optimistic that he can get us out of this dumpster fire that we're in, given the draft picks that we have, given the cap space we have, given the star young quarterback that we have, that we can entice another coaching staff to come in and say, okay, this isn't a team that's going to go through a rebuild. I could potentially have that DeMeco Ryans effect and turn this team around in 1 year, right? I'm cautiously optimistic that's the case.
Well, and that's the weird thing is, like I said, his resume is very down the middle. Like he's done enough good to kind of balance out some of the bad, but like the good he has done, honestly, I think a lot of GMs would have been able to take the first overall pick and trade it to the Panthers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, was
very
it
much
really
handed to him? Yes.
Right? Was it really like your legwork that got that done, or did you just happen to fall into a very lucky situation?
And then he fell into a first overall pick in a year with a whole bunch of really good quarterbacks and a quote generational one at that. Right. Yes. I see, Ryan Poles has been very lucky, as well as had some good picks. But he's been very lucky. And, I think you could nitpick some situations, like, you could have had George Pickens instead of Brisker. You could have had Jalen Carter instead of Darnell Wright. Poles really went with the safer option, the character, the potential of, higher professionalism, the quality of person, a little bit more than just looking at how talented those players were. Because, Jalen Carter is one of the best defensive tackles in football. I think George Pickens, had he had, a little more consistency at quarterback coming into the league, I think he is absolutely a superstar wide receiver, right? And, would I look at, the players we took, Darnell Wright and Brisker, would I have taken those guys over those other guys? Not if I'm playing Madden, right? But the character, the personality, the person, the professionalism, those things do matter. So, I do give Ryan Poles a little bit of a pass, even though I thought that a top 10 draft pick for a right tackle is a little high. And it's not Joe Alt caliber of a player. I think Darnell Wright is a good right tackle. I don't think he'll ever be a great right tackle. Rome Odunze, I think is a good wide receiver, but I don't see, Jamar Chase or Jefferson ceiling in Odunze. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, these guys have long careers. They absolutely could take off. They could be far better than I'm giving them credit for. But just going off the eye test and where I thought they fell in the draft as far as their talents and all those kind of things, I think Poles kind of went a little bit of the safe route, but still got good players, but not elite or exceptional players.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what you have to toss into that too is, okay, you got DJ Moore instead of CJ Stroud. Now, I was all for that move. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so, like, I get making that move. Once again, I'm a guy on the couch. You're the GM of the Bears. Like, the results at the end of the day are going to dictate whether that move was the right move or not. You have to look at that one and go, well, okay, we'll give you a pass. Because that, you know what I mean? I get it. And then, with Caleb, I'm still very confident in Caleb with what he can do in the future. And I think, like I said, I need another 2 more years. But, Jaden Daniels is out there lighting it up. Bo Nix is out there lighting it up. Like, Drake May doesn't look half bad either. So, okay, you start kind of wondering about that a little bit too. And then, like, I didn't mind dropping back from 9 to 10 and getting Darnell Wright. What concerned me is the team that moved up was the Eagles. I'm just like, well, if anybody's going to fuck anybody here, it's going to be the Eagles fucking us. You know what I mean? Because they have one of the best front offices that really knows what they're doing. So that was what kind of concerned me a little bit. And with the locker room being in a place where you can't handle a high-level, high-character guy, I actually thought, because Brian Poles actually came out and said that. His opinion on Jalen Carter was, I'm not sure if our locker room is in position and strong enough to be able to handle a guy with character issues. And I always thought that he was talking about Justin Fields. Now I'm wondering if he was talking about Matt Eberflus.
Yes,
dude, man, because you have guys out there like Mike Tomlin. Antonio Brown was not an issue, and when he was, it was in his last year on the Steelers, and they let him go. And then we saw what Antonio Brown was.
Right.
It's like, props to you, Mike Tomlin, because you don't just say we're keeping it in house. You kept it in house, like
right. Like, was Randy Moss a diva at times in his career? Right. Like Michael Irving. I mean, there's so many players. Like, why can't we be that team that takes a guy who, maybe has questionable character or professionalism, but still manufactures a all-pro, Pro Bowl player out of him? Because at the end of the day, like, we care about the play on the field. As much as I don't want this guy to be, doing things to hurt other people outside of football, like, I'm not condoning that by any means. But these, like, defensive linemen, Greg Gabriel always brings it up. He's like, they're thugs. They're big, bad, mean MFers, right? So,
Domicon too, he was this Stompacon, man. Like, he was just stomp you on the ground. He doesn't care.
Right. And they play well and they take their team to the playoffs and to Super Bowl. So, I just wondered why it can be us. And he said he didn't think we didn't have the locker room. Well, I think, yes, you're right. We didn't have the head coach. Because, and this is why I also think that Shane Walden didn't work out, is that Eberflus is soft. He brings in a soft offensive coordinator, and then they bring in a high character, high profile first overall draft pick in Caleb Williams. And he's like, are you guys serious? Like, you guys are so soft. You're not pushing for greatness here, you guys. Like, you're letting us dictate how much greatness we pull out of ourselves. I want a head coach like Tomlin who gets in their ear, grabs, Pickens' face mask, and he's like, like, because he had this big drop and he grabbed him, look at me in the face, like, that's not going to define us. And George Pickens goes to walk away. He's like, no, look at me in the face, look at me in the eyes. It's not going to define us. The very next play, Pickens gets a touchdown reception, and it was this fantastic catch. I want that guy on our team, not this Eberflusy, like, hey, all we have is us, all we have is together. Like, what was that?
Dude, I've always, one of my my second favorite team has been the Patriots for the longest time. You get a false start or something as a wide receiver, you might not go back in that game.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, the expectations are so high for the little mistakes. If you're just not ready for the basics, then I can't count on you, period. And that expectation was set. And it was set without being extremely vocal or anything like that. And so you could do that when you actually hold the guys accountable and follow through with it, right? So, like, as far as high character guys go, like, this is the NFL. You're going to have high character guys. Man, one of my favorite stories was I believe Schlereth, Mark Schlereth, I think, who was an offensive lineman for the Broncos and the Redskins back in the day. He said when he went to, the Broncos was very structured, but when he went to the Redskins, at the time it was the Redskins, so I'm going to call them the Redskins.
That's fine.
He said his first year there, like, the defensive line was super edgy in practice, and they were fucking playing through the whistle in practice, and he was getting into it with one of the tackles or something. And he goes, at the end of practice, the offense goes in the locker room first, strips down, starts taking a shower, then the defense comes in. He's like, so I'm in the shower, and they come in, and this guy's still talking shit. And he's like, it just triggered me. Like, he's like, I went face to face with him. He's like, I'm butt naked. This guy's in full pads. And we start shoving each other around the fucking line. Like, they're nuts, man. Like, you got to understand who you're dealing with here. You know what I mean? And as a head coach, you're there to manage that. Like,
Right.
you're there to manage these nutcases. And all that matters is the performance on the field. Because if personality and character mattered, and J2K earlier, like, oh, I'm not for hurting a guy. And I was just like, yeah, maybe sometimes. Like, all I care, like, if it's gonna be Aaron Rodgers, tear his leg off. You know what I mean? Like, listen, I don't care. I'm cutthroat. This is the NFL. This is the highest part of the sport that you can achieve. And so anything, man, it's not just gonna be nice guys. If you want nice guys, you're gonna have a team full of Tim Tebow's. That's great for character and everything else. As far as performance on the field, it's not going to happen. And so to have a head coach or a locker room that can't manage a rookie, to me,
Right.
is silly. Like, that's a joke in itself, man.
Right.
Yeah. So, once again, another thing you kind of like look at Ryan Poles for, because again, you backed Eberflus this offseason and everything like that. And we saw it with Thomas Brown. He came in and just said the right things. Listen, and I know we're going on over an hour. I'm sure I don't want to waste too much more of your time. We can finish this up shortly, but I'll keep talking if you want. But I was texting David during the game, and I actually even commented on Thian Smythe's one of his Twitter posts. And I texted David. I was like, okay, so second 30-yard gain for Kittle. I go, that one. He felt that one because we're violent, and we're rewarding violence now. So after that 30-yard gain, he felt that one, and then it was like a third 30-yard gain. I was like, well, okay, no, this one, he feels this one because we're violent. We're rewarding violence. Like, that time after that 30-yard gain, that's the one that he won't dare to do that again. It's like, dude, you could say all the right stuff. Go ahead, go out there, speak in front of a mic, but. Go ahead.
Yeah, true. But I do look at a head coach that needs to be a leader, doesn't need to be an X and O guy. That's really, that's Dan Campbell was a guy you're like, really? Like, he looks like a wrestler, talks like a wrestler, and he's going to be your football head coach. Like, are you kidding me? But then you see how much he gets out of his players just because of how he talks. So I don't mind that as much. I like that Thomas Brown talks this way. It's such a, I think we're probably putting a little too much clout on it because we just got back from, 3 years of Eberflus just being soft about everything. And you're just like, oh my God, man, like have some accountability yourself, hold these players to some accountability, and, have a locker room speech. Have an in-game speech that inspires me. And he never does. He's like, okay, team, tough loss today, but we're just got to get back to X's and O's. Or when we win, it's like, that's what we do. We still got to, get back to the film. There's still things to correct. All right, everybody, win on 3, 1, 2, 3. And it's just not inspiring. At least Thomas Brown is saying the right things, even if we're losing, at least he's saying the right things. But we need to combine the winning and the saying the right things in a head coach.
Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Miami Dolphins, I saw a thing with him where he was going over tape with his team, and they're going to criticize themselves a lot more detailed than we as fans ever will. But he got to a play and he's like, yeah, this one is like, I fucked this one up.
Yep.
This was a shit call right here by me. Sorry, guys. Like, I'll try and not make the same mistake. And so that's accountability. You're telling the rest of your guys, I'm not perfect either, but I'm going to learn instead of just blaming them all the way. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't know if you heard all this or not. I'm sure you have. Like, the guy that went off on Matt Eberflus was Jalen Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah, this guy in Matt Eberflus's first year was third string during training camp practice. They literally took a starter and put him at third string, and at the end of the day, yeah, that's the guy that's going to give it right back to you. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't having it, man. And it's so funny to me and almost ironic that they just signed him too recently. Like, this is one of your leaders. He's not a very vocal guy. He's not out there creating headlines or anything like that. And in the locker room, he just couldn't take it anymore and snap. Meanwhile, a guy like Keenan Allen, who's only here for a year, was out there all the time saying, like, no, this isn't how a professional football team should be ran. There was a play against the Packers where the special teams started coming out of the field. It was a 4th and 5. Yep. And the offense started waving them back, and they went back on the sidelines, and they went out there and tried to run a play and couldn't get it. And Keenan Allen explained it like, listen, we all knew we had to go for it. However, the kicker, the holder, all these guys are running out. We're telling them get back on the field. He's like, and then by the time Thomas Brown started calling out a play, 15 seconds hit. At 15 seconds, all headphones, mics go out.
Yep.
So Caleb was heard half the play, and he's looking at his wristband, trying to think of maybe what play they were trying to call, and did his best job, and he called a running play on 4th and 5. Keenan Allen's in a huddle like, that's not the play, man. And they line up, and Caleb knows that's not it too. But I mean, you're less than 15 seconds. You got to get out there, line up, and snap the ball. So he tries to make an audible on it, and it's an audible off of a run play. And Keenan Allen's like, we did the best we could, man. And what actually happened was Eberflus did not click over to the special teams channel to let the special teams coordinator know, hey, we're going for it. He was screaming, we're going for it on the offensive channel, which prevented Thomas Brown from being able to call out a play.
Right.
Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, you're third-year head coach.
Yeah, the miscues. And even though there are things like, I know there was a timeout we called earlier in the season, I think it was Washington, where it was 4th down, and we did send out the players. There's a miscommunication between Hightower and Eberflus. Flus is holding up, go for 2, and Hightower held up go for 1. So he sent the field goal unit onto the field. And even though that was technically Hightower's fault, we've just seen too much disconnect between what the coaches and the play callers are supposed to do in this year that was supposed to be. I mean, these are guys who have been together for most of the last 3 years. Sure, we had some changes on offense, coordinator, wide receiver coach, running back coach, right? Some changes, tight end coach, I believe, or maybe he actually stayed. I know running back coach and offensive line coach, and I think tight end coach stayed. But there's just these things that are already like issues that you would think, oh, that happens in the first couple games of a new coaching staff, not one that has been around for 3 years. And what up, Carl, man? Good to see you, brother.
Yeah,
And
definitely. And so, I believe last time you were on with me and David, we were, really digging into a challenge that Eberflus threw. And I think you made the case for, why it might have been the right call in this. And I was like, okay. Or maybe it was a challenge he missed. I was like, okay, but like at the end of the day, throughout his career, 20% on challenges.
right.
So I can't give him the benefit of the doubt when consistently there's failure. And that's what I
Mhm.
think. I think that's where we're kind of getting to. It's like, man, it's year 3. Like, this isn't, the time or place for a coach to grow. Like, you had those growing pains in the first 2 years. And that's where I kind of go back to why me and David even saw moving on from him to be the right move this last offseason, because I truly feel that a coach makes a difference in 2 scenarios the most. One is when the team is at its worst, which is what I think we're seeing with Sean Payton and the Broncos, when everything's at its odds and, salary cap, talent, whatever, you could still get guys to play better than they're supposed to.
Mhm.
And the second part is when you're in the playoffs and you need to get over the edge.
Right.
The coaching staff might be able to be the part of the team that helps you do that. The middle part's easy, man. So that's
Right.
why Flu's got to like float around. But, he didn't ever show me anything that led me to be, I don't know, confident about his ability to keep this thing going forward in a positive direction. So, yeah.
And going back to the Jalen Johnson thing, when he got upset in the locker room and he's like, I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of this. What I would want out of a head coach is to scream back at him, I'm tired too. Like, I'm tired of losing, and I need to do better. You guys need to do better. We all need to do better. We need to get back to this. We need to dial in. I need to do that the most. I'm going to come in with a sheet of all the things that I've messed up. I'm going to also come in with a sheet with all the things you've messed up. And that's what we're going to work on. And what did Eberflus do? He let Jalen Johnson finish, and he walked out of the locker room. He just walked away.
I read he was escorted out.
Escorted
out. Right. That's where we're at.
Oh, man.
But wait a second. We're not in position to have any high character guys in this locker room.
Right.
Not even in position to have the guys that take 4 years to pop.
Like George Pickens or Jalen Carter could have been in that locker room, like, after the first loss and being like, what is wrong with you guys? You guys all laid down. Like, you got, none of you guys have any fight in you, and a whole bunch of cuss words mixed in there, like, sometimes those are the guys that you actually need. Those are the guys who are going to rile other people up, or are not going to take it. They're not going to lie down. They're not going to be quiet and nice.
Yeah, and the red flags were there all along the way. In training camp, you heard that these players were saying they want to be coached harder. I know early on there was a game, week 2 or week 3, where Caleb was chewing Shane Waldron out for not getting a play in fast enough.
Yeah,
like, I wouldn't be surprised.
The eye roll on the sideline. Caleb Williams did what, Shane Waldron's like all giddy and laughing and all this kind of stuff. And you just see Caleb Williams just roll his eyes like, oh my God, what am I dealing with here?
Right. So I just quickly, just to get your opinion. So we're left with this feeling of where are we at moving forward? What do you think is ahead for this team? Like, what positives can we still gain from the matchups we have through the rest of the season?
That's a good question, Paul. What can we gain? I don't know if it's much, to be honest. I think this is now at a point where everything is an individual player, coach, scout. This is for their career. And I'm not sure how many of these people really even kind of care too much now. I mean, if you're on the final year of your contract and you're a player, like how much do you actually put into this team? If you're slightly injured, you don't have much opportunity. if you're if you're a coach and you're seeing the end is near, how hard do you actually work on this stuff? How, do you really dial into the X's and O's? So right now it's more of a survival instinct that I'm looking for. And do these guys, do they show up and say, you know what, this is my career? I love the game of football. I have pride in myself. No one else is going to give me any motivation to succeed. I don't have any motivation as far as getting to the playoffs or win-loss record. None of those things are motivations other than my career and the fact that I care about football. And I think that's pretty much all you can take away from the rest of this season. I would like to continue to see improvement from Caleb Williams. All the rookies, all the young guys, if they can improve in these last few games, that's what I'm hoping for. But it's just, unfortunately, it's like, for me, like, I'm watching these games just to see how they unfold, and I have an eye on researching the draft and the free agency, coaches, free agents. That's where my head is going right now, and I'm just watching the games kind of passively.
So it's we're gonna end it here on one more spicy little question. I'm gonna kind of toss it up here at the end. So logically, right? Because I'm with you all the way. We're at a point now where our generational prospect, first overall draft pick quarterback. By the way, the Bears had a first overall pick in 1957. And then since then, the first one they had since then was the one they traded for DJ Moore. And they had two back-to-back. So not only the generational quarterback, but like the luck of the century when it comes to draft capital and status and all that. And we're at a point where there's, 4 games left? You still have to face your division once and the Seahawks. Yep. And he's already the most sacked rookie quarterback in the NFL history, right? Mm-hmm. So even if we win out, doesn't do anything for us. The division is strong as hell. We're not making the playoffs. I saw a thing today during the game that said in the hunt.
Oh,
my friend texted to me. I go, I know, man. That's such a joke. Such a joke. We're okay. It's done. It's done. It's dead. Thomas Brown might be, beefing up his resume, this and that. It doesn't really help Caleb to go out there and get sacked more, or is it time to just, what David would say? And I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he would make this type of a point where, like, okay, if Tyson Bagent is a trade piece at all, go out there and try and improve that value. Are we there?
I would say no. Now, reason why. Now, there is a good point to me made that if you have any sort of asset on the team right now, that you would do everything you could to improve that asset for, next year as general manager, Ryan Poles. So the idea of, say, playing Bagent and getting him to show what his value is, and then, maybe getting a second round draft pick for him in the off season. There is some logic there, but I think you have to combine the fact that it's all about Caleb's growth at this point in time. And you've got to give Caleb as many snaps as possible. We went from a split field read play calling system with Waldron to a pure progression play calling system with Thomas Brown. He kind of, so to speak, dumbed it down a little bit, which gave us some success. I think there needs to be a better blend in that. And even though Caleb is a rookie and it is hard for a rookie to be successful in a high volume of split field reads, I would challenge the kid, because you want that on tape. You want him to go, okay, I made this read based off the middle linebacker, and then I went and targeted this guy. Go back to the tape. Was that the right decision? Right. So he can learn and grow. Ultimately, where you want to get to is to have a quarterback that can absolutely run a split field read system. That's the goal.
And I agree with you totally in theory and like on paper, but like I said, we have a quarter left of the season to go, and he's already the most sacked quarterback. So like today we had 7. Let's say he gets sacked an average of 4 or 5 times a game. You want to really like set that record by top it off by like 15, 16 sacks. Like at what point is it actually hurting him? Instead, like I understand what you're saying. It's like every rep counts, every snap counts. We're well into the season. It's done. You can't tell me that guy's not in pain.
Well, I think,
Like
you look at the numbers and they're scary, right? But you really want to look at context. So, are the sacks causing injury yet? Is he just completely, he's got the 1,000-mile stare at a defense and just doesn't know what he's looking at anymore, or he's seeing ghosts. I haven't seen that to the extent that you got to pull him like Sam Darnold early in his career, where he was just totally seeing ghosts and just couldn't operate. His brain was just glitching out.
Oh, I get that. And so like my thing is I would like to avoid that. Pull the plug a little bit early, I guess. And I'm not totally sold on the opinion I'm pitching you here. It's just kind of a thought I've had recently, but it's like, at some point you might be better off learning on the bench from watching and then relating what you're seeing to the experiences you've already had. Because at the end of the day, like you go out there and sure, are these hits causing an injury right now? No. Well, the kid's also really young too, like, and he's tough. However, somebody pointed out Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck only survived 7 years in this league. Couldn't take it anymore. Like at some point, look at a guy like Carson Wentz, like at some point your body will break down. And so it's more of a longevity thing. Like
Right.
if I plan to keep Caleb here 10 years, why would I want him sacked 70 times in the first year he's here? Like at some point, what else do we have to gain other than reps and snaps? We're about to we still have the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers. Our division's tough. So
I get the concern.
Right.
It's valid, right? It's a valid concern. It's just one of those concerns I think you weigh it out in the moment. If we just have, it's fourth quarter and we're down by 3 scores, 6 minutes left, and Caleb is just getting, beat up left and right, and in a bad way, worse than we've seen this year, then you might go, okay, well, let's go heavy run game so we're not beating up Caleb. In a way, you kind of concede to an extent. Maybe you bring in, like we did in this game, you brought in Bajent to basically just go through 5 reps, or I think we actually went 3 and out. Those 3 reps at quarterback to, get the play call the huddle, check the middle linebacker, make your alerts, do those things. Just go through that progression. You want to give Bajent a little bit of that when you can. You'd like to do that in a blowout win, not a blowout loss. But you still do want to get some reps. I think it's a fair concern, and I would just take it play by play.
Yeah, and so Jimmer here is saying they're wrong there, by the way. They are playing Caleb till he gets injured. Yes, and that's what I'm saying too. And he will play until he gets injured. He showed me that in multiple games that no matter what the situation, he's going to go out there and keep trying. And Joe Burrows showed me that too. No matter what the situation, this kid will fucking lay himself out there to just complete a pass, especially if it's, I tend to take a step back and look a little bit more at the overall picture and say, well, I get that he's a football player and I understand that, but why would I want to play him until he gets injured? Because that's the thing. It's like if in 2 weeks he's hurt, are we happy about that? And there's
Right.
not many other routes that this is going to go, especially when he's set a record for being sacked as the most rookie. Like I said, I'm going to end it off on a spicy little question. So, I hear you. I know what they're going to do. They're going to give him every single rep and every single chance to go out there. They're going to say you could get hurt on any play and this and that. But I know my logic also tells me that, these hits are accumulative. Enough's enough. We're done. I would just let this kid, study it from the sideline now, piece it together. Let's go out there next year and try. So yeah, I don't know. Just my 2 cents, but I know it's not going to happen. So
Right. Well, and you don't want to piss Caleb off as well, right? You don't want to jump in there and go, "Hey, Caleb, we're going to pull you just because our offensive line sucks so much that we just we can't block for you. We don't want you to get injured, so we're going to put Bajan in." And he might be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, no way, I'm conceding to this."
And these guys are meatheads. I mean, they're going to say, "Well, like everybody else, all my other teammates are out there trying.
Right.
They could all get hurt.
Right.
Why aren't you going to put me out there to get hurt?" And that's where sometimes you need to save a player from himself. Take a little bit more of a.
Well,
I understand what the players want to do and what's right for them and what's right from their perspective and everything like that. From a coaching perspective, from a GM perspective, I would want to keep my asset in my he's everything to us, man. This kid gets a shoulder injury 3 weeks from now that lingers into next year or something. Like the potential risk can be very bad, and there's still stuff to learn from the sideline. And like I said, you've already set the record for being sacked most enough. Like, what do we have? I would personally do it, but like I said, I know it's not going to be a very take. So, but yeah.
Well, earlier in this year when Caleb was out there and we had no chance of coming back, and then he did get hurt, but it was not a lingering injury. That was stupid.
Yes.
At that point, our offensive line was getting absolutely destroyed, and you still had Caleb Williams dropping back. I mean, it's one thing to pull the guy, but it's another thing to not even run the ball when you're just running the clock out at this point. Put in Bajan, let him run the ball, let him do a boot action or something, just so he can get some of those routine things as a quarterback in the NFL playing on the field can get. So yeah, it was stupid when we did that earlier this year, but I think you take it play by play, you take it game by game, you talk to Caleb. It's a like you said, it's not just one thing, right? It's a multitude of things that you gotta to consider, but it's a valid concern. It is absolutely, considering how bad this offensive line is, it's a valid concern. And the teams that we're going to be playing, they all have a chance to be in the playoffs. They're all fighting very hard. And if we don't have the fight, if our offensive line doesn't bring the fight to them, and they're just getting bull rushed over and over, and people are quitting around Caleb Williams, and Caleb's the one guy who's not quitting, I mean, first you have a conversation with the rest of the players, but second, you do start to wonder, what am I getting out of Caleb playing right now? And it's a valid concern.
Definitely. And yeah, so unfortunately that's where we're at, but yeah, we're getting a lot of chat comments in here. I can't keep up with all of them, unfortunately, but man, like I said, I don't see it going many other ways, unfortunately. And when is too much? Hopefully Caleb stays healthy through the rest of the year, and this isn't a short I wind up making in a week or two, right? Because yeah, it's rough, man. And I also said it too, I like that you mentioned it earlier. I go, if we do lose this game in a very bad fashion, it's on the draft talk. So I'm sure that's where it will be. Guys, I don't want to take too much more time up here. Thank you guys so much for joining us after this terrible, terrible loss this week against a very winnable team. But like I said, it just underlines some more obvious situations and makes some things very clear, and hopefully makes the path forward during the offseason become much more direct on what this team exactly needs. J2K, man, I we're almost running on an hour 40 here. So thank you so much for all your time, especially with a last second request and shout out there to you. So thank you so much for just joining me on the drop of a dime, and always appreciate your input. Always appreciate your insight. And once again, all the graphics here that everybody sees, the background, the intro, the outro, all that stuff, it's all J2K. And he does some amazing graphic arts work. So if you ever need anything done, definitely reach out to him, because he's definitely really good at what he does. So
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. And
I appreciate you.
yeah, thanks for inviting me on. It was therapeutic to talk this out with you. You know, I kind of got a lot of stuff off my chest that, you know, I can go into this week and not be as upset about the Bears. I hope the chat, you know, you guys feel the same way, that, you know, at this point in the season like this, it really is about the community. It's about podcasters and podcasts like Paul and Bearsky Films with Dave, Thigh and Smile with Carl, you know, BCP, Shorty, and PJ and Foster, and Carl's on that too. It's just a wonderful community we have. And even at the worst of times, you know, I appreciate you guys all showing up, you know, talking through a disaster of a season together. And I just want to leave you with just this little bit of hope that, you know, we do have a young star quarterback on this team. Today, we finally got to see Rome, you know, get a 2 touchdown game and start to show what he's capable of doing. And, you know, nothing would make me happier than to see a Bears winning season and get to the playoffs. But more importantly, it's to do it with all you guys. So I always appreciate, just even if I'm, you know, a guy in the chat, just saying hi to you guys, and you know, wishing you all well, and just shooting the shit and talking Bears football. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the community. I appreciate all the great podcasters out there that you know, give us a platform just to talk our piece about the Bears, and you know, argue and debate and discuss, and it's fun. It's something that I enjoy doing, and I'm thankful that you guys have all welcomed me into this community, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna push it another 2.5 minutes here to an hour 45, because, dude, I couldn't agree more. It's definitely therapeutic. It's very therapeutic for me. I used to be pissed all week.
Right.
I'll go to work all right tomorrow. You know what I mean? Because we
Yeah.
had some time to sit there and talk this out. So for me, it's definitely a necessity to just go out there and just bullshit some football and whatnot. And I want to leave all the people in chat, because, like I said, I appreciate everybody's involvement and everything. So let's leave it off with a fun little trivia question. Number one, I want to just state that one person, after all this time, realized that in our logo there's 2 numbers that repeat. And you told me, yes, the Bears have had 2 numbers that were retired twice. And so that was a cool little piece of trivia. But J2K, I have one for you. On Soldier Field turf. Now, mind you, the Bears didn't always play in Soldier Field, right? So they started playing there in the 60s. So on Soldier Field home turf, on that grass itself, who's the Bears' leading receiver, leading rusher, and leading passer?
Oh, on the Bears field. Oh, current, like
grass.
Soldier Field, right?
Yeah.
Walter Payton.
Walter Payton is the leading rusher.
Right.
That's definitely the opposite.
Leading wide receiver. I mean, this is a guess, but Willie Galt.
No, you actually already said his name.
Oh, I already said his name. Like
within the last 30
podcast?
seconds. Within the last 30
in the last
seconds.
30 seconds. Oh gosh, my memory doesn't even go back that far.
Who's the leading rusher?
Walter
Who's the
Payton.
leading rusher? Who's the leading receiver? Walter Payton. Walter Payton.
Oh, you're kidding me. Oh,
The
wow.
leading
Okay,
passer.
and then quarterback would be Cutler?
Yep.
All right.
So this is where
Ooh,
we're at,
that's
though,
nice
guys.
trivia because it's a little bit of a
Yeah,
trick question.
it is.
Yeah,
It is a
I
little
like
bit of a
it.
trick question, and it makes you think a little bit. But at the end of the day, that's where we're at. Our leading rusher, our leading receiver on home turf for everybody that goes out to the games and watches the games. It's been
Right.
a guy that hasn't been here for a long while. So bar's not set
And he
high.
was a running back, not a
Yes.
wide receiver.
Right. Didn't even add that detail in. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Have a good night. Me and David will be on tomorrow. And yeah, appreciate all you guys in chat and all the interaction, and bear down.
Bear down, everybody.